What's up guys, my name is Josh and today we're going to be discussing the love child of Massdrop and Sennheiser, the HD6XX. And if you don't know, this is an exact copy of the HD650. So it's the exact same headphone in a slightly different color, and I think with a slightly different cable, but don't quote me on that. So I have a lot of feelings about this headphone, so this is probably going to be a longer video. If you want to skip to any particular part, go ahead and jump here and that'll get you to wherever you want to go. That being said, the quick and dirty of this review is buy this headphone if you've never heard 6XXs before, if you've never heard HD600s before, if you want to hear what a basic representation of neutrality is. This is a great headphone, especially at the price of $200. Now, one thing to factor in is that the HD6XX is a very popular headphone, which is actually part of the reason why I recommend getting it, is because it kind of offers a very good reference for a lot of people who have heard that headphone, and it makes it easier for people to compare based off of that reference, if that makes any sense at all. But one thing you should be aware of is that there have been reports of very long waits because these are so popular. I've heard anywhere between like a couple of days to literally like 6 to 8 months to get them. So be aware that waiting could be a possibility for you, but that's going to be a completely personal decision if you're willing to wait, or if you want to spend the extra, almost double the amount to get the HD650s, which again is the exact same headphone, just from Sennheiser. This is from Massdrop. Okay, so I'm going to try my best to do this review with giving you as much information as I can and remaining honest to the product, while not kind of beating you over the head with things you have already heard, because by now these have been reviewed by every reviewer and their mother to tell you about this headphone. And the general consensus is that it's absolutely worth it, and that's going to be my general consensus. So if you just wanted to see my ending thoughts, that's it. Just buy the headphone. It's totally worth it if you're willing to wait. That being said, let's go ahead and jump into build. So the build of this is plastic, but it's a very robust plastic, and honestly, these last for years. I have known a surprising amount of people who have had 600s and 650s for literally years without any issues. Now for me, they are very comfortable. I kind of fit right on the medium head size band, and these do have the versatility to fit like a myriad of different head sizes, all the way from like a small to an extra large, because they do extend out quite a bit. So if you got a really big head like that, it'll actually still work for you. Now these do clamp on your head pretty tight. I'm a huge fan of the clamp force on this. I think it's very comfortable. I like my headphones to feel secure and like they're not going to fall off, but some people do complain that it does kind of press on their jaw. Not an issue for me, maybe not an issue for you, but maybe it is. So factor that into the equation of this. Now onto the power requirements of these. So the impedance of these comes in at 300 ohms, and they have a sound pressure level of 103 decibels. And the amplification for this headphone is kind of a controversial topic. Basically, I'm going to list it like this. Now, even though these are 300 ohm, if you want to play them at proper listening levels, you can play them off of a phone. But in my experience, to get the full quality of sound, to get the full depth of the bass, you do need to amplify them properly. A Fola 2, in my experience, was able to get me like 95% of the way there. Honestly, I didn't really hear much of a difference going to a more powerful amp than that, but there was a little bit of a difference. So I would say that the more power you can give these, the better. The cleaner the amp, the better. These also are really kind of famous for taking super well to a tube amplifier. And I would say that there is definitely an obvious change from a solid state to a tube. You know, less obvious from a solid state to another solid state, but when you go from solid state to tube, it's almost like a different headphone at that point. But which sound you prefer is really going to come down to you, and I do recommend trying both. But just know that you can tube these, and it does change the sound quite a bit. Now, speaking of sound, let's go ahead and jump into my general thoughts about sound. So in a nutshell, these are mid-range and vocal specialists. That is what these do. That's how I defined the 660s. That's how I define the 600s. That's how I define the 650s. They have great separation, great vocal isolation, great vocal presence, great vocal detail, great vocal clarity, everything you could want in vocals, these offer. Tonality, resonance, all of it. It's very good on this headphone. Now let's get into kind of the nuances of the sound, starting with highs. So in a previous video of mine, because this is kind of a re-review, because I technically did review the 650s before, I called them bright, and I'm definitely going to retract that statement. I've heard a lot of headphones between when I reviewed that, as that was, I think one of my my second or third review or something like that, and now, and I don't consider these to be bright. And while I do think that the highs are very, very present, I do not consider them to be bright, so I apologize for that last statement. And me calling them bright honestly seemed to be a mistake in amplification and not amplifying them properly. The issue has now been corrected, and now I am amplifying these properly, and I could say that these are not a bright headphone. The highs are very well mannered. They have good presence, they have good attack, good speed to them, and honestly, I really enjoy the highs on these. Okay, now let's talk about the mids. So the mids are absolutely magnificent, especially for $200. They are some of the best mid-range, especially the vocal portion of mid-range, that you can buy for $200. The focus, the imaging, the pressure, the detail, the presence of the vocals and the mid-range is just excellent, and they're a very intimate sounding headphone. They are one of like the narrowest sounding headphone, which I'll get into soundstage and how it's not super great, but it can be better, but I'll get into that in a second. But for now, regarding the mid-range, I want to talk about vocals, and really I'm not going to get super into it because the only thing that I can really say is that it's a staple of the 600 line. Vocals are what they are known for, and this is probably the best headphone for vocals that you could buy for $200. I'd be really curious to see if there's anything in this price range that could get the detail, the tonality, the texture, the depth of vocals that this headphone can offer. Now let's get into the lows. So right off the bat, I will say that lows seem to depend heavily on your amplification. Now, this is kind of a controversial topic. Some people say they have no lows, some people say they do have lows, some people say the bass is incredible. And my take on it is that it depends on the amplification, honestly. If you drive it off of a phone, you're probably not gonna get any sort of sub bass out of these. However, these are, to begin with, not a very bassy headphone. That's not really what they're made to do. They are very mid-range and upper mid-range focused. And you can see that in a frequency response graph. And you can see this dip in the bass, and then it kind of smooths off and stays pretty even to the upper mid-ranges and the lower high ranges. And then it starts to kind of fluctuate a little bit more rapidly from there. So the bass is very detailed, but it's not very impactful, and there's not a lot of it. And because of that mid-range and high-range focus, these are actually very good for monitoring. But honestly, these are a very enjoyable listening headphone for not just professional use, but for personal use. Now, soundstage and imaging. Imaging is absolutely excellent. Just phenomenal. Left to right separation is very good. However, these are not a super wide headphone when it comes to soundstage, especially compared to some other headphones in this price range. But these headphones really aren't known for that. That's really not what they do. That's really not what they're for. Although the soundstage has been known to be wider on a tube, although you're still not talking about an extremely wide headphone. And when you're listening to music, it's very rare that sounds appear further out than the boundary of the headphone itself. Yet this is still a very enjoyable headphone. And this kind of brings me into a gaming category, which I feel like is another controversial area for this headphone. Can you game on this? I think it depends on you and what you like, and I think it also depends on the game. And the reason why is because depending on the game, if you're not a person who really cares much more about the sound around you and you more just care about what's on screen, that's where having fantastic imaging comes in. Because if you're focused on a particular area and you're looking at that area, the imaging within that area, depending on the game, is going to be very accurate. And because of that accuracy in imaging, if you have someone who's coming, let's say, behind a wall, but they're in front of you, and they're kind of going slightly to the right or slightly to the left or whatever, and because this headphone has such good imaging, you're going to be able to pick up on that slight deviation very well. But it also depends heavily on which game you're playing, the circumstances, and how you play. So for like Z, he's said time and time again that he can't play for more than like 5 minutes with 600s or 650s. Me, I can play for hours on 600s or 650s, and it doesn't bug me at all, and I play very well with them. Now, when it comes to gaming, does it quite give me the gaming advantage that like a 668B would get for like 50 bucks? No. Honestly, it doesn't. But that's going to be personal. It's going to be depending on the game and how you play. Now, the question that I know I'm going to be getting a lot, 6XXs or 660s. And here's the thing. And my thoughts on this are, with the 6XXs and the 600, you get this texture and this detail, but you also get this odd sense of smoothness to the sound. There's a sort of overwhelming kind of effortlessness to the sound that makes it have the smooth characteristic to it. A feature that very few headphones are actually able to replicate. And if you were to compare this against the 660s, I would say the 660s sacrifice a little bit of that smoothness for a little bit more detail. So can I recommend buying the 660s for literally 2.5 times the cost of this? The truth is no, I really can't. It's not a big enough of a sonic difference. The build quality and the cosmetic changes were not drastic enough for me to say that that is a better overall headphone for not just sound quality. It's pretty much the same thing as this with just a different driver in it. And both sound very, very similar. Both are very, very good, but I don't think that that headphone is 2.5 times better than this one. That being said, let's go ahead and get into the conclusion of this headphone. So at this price, this is a great headphone that is a great reference simply for the fact that so many people have heard it. And it's a great point of reference if you're gonna have any sort of discussion or conversation about audio. It's an amazing sound, it's an intimate sound, it's got detailed and focused mid-range, and personally, I love them for that. I really do enjoy these headphones. This is one of my favorite sounds. Honestly, after listening to this, I'm thinking about buying a pair because I had to get rid of my 600s to afford new audio gear, but I miss the sound of these so much. Anyways, these were sent to me by a viewer and a patron. Patreon link is in the description down below. You know who you are. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I'll leave a link to these, the 600s, the 650s down below so you can check them out if you'd like. And yeah, guys, I think this is a great option, and I think this is definitely worth the money. And if you're still here Friday, I am going to have a comparison between the 4XXs and the 6XXs to kind of see which one you should put your money towards depending on what you like. So hit the subscribe button if you're not already. I'll catch you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.